Hello and welcome to the Max MPS Radio. My name is Jan Friss as always, and today I'm honored to have Andrew Keiller on the podcast. We will talk about all things regards to mindset and mentality. I don't have a fixed podcast name or episode name yet, but I will make sure to have a good one. Andy, welcome. I welcome you on the podcast and glad you took the time out of your day.
No, I'm happy to.
Cool. Just before we actually start diving into today's topics, could you quickly introduce yourself for anyone who doesn't know you?
Yeah, of course. I'm best known through my Instagram handle, which is ARKNutrition. I am a competitive bodybuilding coach and a life coach. I've been coaching for 16 years now, which makes me feel old to say. Yeah, that to be honest, that is about as much of me as people tend to get. That I'm just known as the honest guy that doesn't give a fuck. And I essentially now spend the majority of my time teaching other people how to achieve that same mindset so that they can lift the restrictions from the life that are imposed by other people.
Really cool. I can only highly recommend your Instagram channel to people that are interested in those type of topics, and I mean pretty much everyone can get something out of that. So before we actually talk about today's more mindset orientated things, I would quickly talk about prep, because you're a competitor. You are a competitor yourself, and I think you wanted to compete in 2020. I think that didn't happen, right?
Yeah. It was just the restrictions. It was the restriction on access to the gyms, restriction of shows being cancelled, changed, etc. And it was just given things within my personal life. Like I'm a father of 3. With them not being in school, so the homeschooling, adding a lot of extra time to my day-to-day schedule, just meant that the potential travel that I could have done to get to a gym to be able to still prep, still compete, it wasn't possible from a time perspective. So I just kind of wrote the 2020 season off and just decided that I would wait for 2021.
Okay, did the PCA shows that you wanted to do actually happened in hindsight?
You know what? I'm not 100% sure that they did. I don't think the main show that I was going to do, the main qualifying show with the PCA that I do, is the Manchester PCA show. Part of the reason for that is location, because it is very close to home, which makes travel very, very easy. But it's also a very, very well run show. You know, anytime that I've either been there with clients, I've been there simply as a spectator, or I've been there competing, it's always been very well run. Which is something that, you know, attracts me as a competitor. That didn't go ahead, as far as I can remember.
And you competed the first time in 2015, right?
No, the first time I competed was 2005.
Oh, it was okay. Nevertheless, I probably noted down the wrong year. I watched your Strom Sports video, and I probably understood 2015.
Yeah, no, it's 2005. I did the
2005. Damn.
Yeah, yeah. I did the UK BFF Stars of Tomorrow show, the really junior class. I was 19 at the time. Yeah, that was a fun show. The prep for that was very different than preps that I've done since.
I mean, I can only imagine. But you did 12 shows since, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Cool.
Yeah, it's around about 12, 13 shows now, which isn't a lot. I know some people that have done, you know, more shows than that across 2 seasons, but it's just been the way that I've approached it.
At least something I got right. Perfect. About prep, before we dive actually into the main topic, because you wrote a few pieces of content on your Instagram about that. We pretty much don't really have any shows, or only restricted shows at that point. What do you think, like, people that really gets it, or people that are really passionate about bodybuilding, are missing the most right now?
A lot of it is just the process. You know, as we were speaking before we started the recording, those of us that genuinely love the process, that is what we miss the most, and we miss that even during off season. You know, we miss the sacrifice side of prep. We miss the restriction. We miss the routine, and that is just being compounded at the moment because prep isn't just this solitary, selfish focus that we've got. It does appear from the outside as that, but you fail to realize just how much of a community it is once you've been removed from it for so long. You know, when you start a prep, you realize that people that follow you contact you a lot more. How's prep going? How are you feeling? You know, you get a lot more contact from people through social media, the community in the gym during a competitive season. If the gym that you train in, if there are several competitors in that gym and you're essentially going through the process together, that again, it's almost like that family environment, and that at the moment has been completely lost. And I think that for me, from the conversations that I have at least, that is what most people are missing. Obviously, we miss the stage, we miss that whole process, we miss the competition, but it feels like those of us that love it the most miss the process more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally relate to that, and I think it's probably the longer that you didn't do it, the more you miss it. I mean, probably immediately after prep, you don't really miss it that much.
Yeah.
But then, like after maybe a year or 2 years, you really start to miss it. And I had a few days here in Vienna when I actually moved to Vienna, where I just got reminded. It reminded me so much to like the same, or like to the days in Vienna in 2019 when I was actually prepping, and those gave me the goosebumps, man. Like, and it's also all those like dark moments and the suffering you get through. I mean, ultimately in the moment, it may subjectively feel shitty, but it just gives you so much experience for life even. And I think it also shows who it is really for, because it just isn't for everyone. And I think the people that get that feeling probably are the people that really get bodybuilding or contest prep bodybuilding.
Yeah. I mean, you know, that's something that gets spoken of a lot when we talk about competing, dieting, and that whole process of prep. People will say it's the sacrifice, it's the suffering, you know, it's this, it's that, it's the other. But ultimately, what it always tends to come down to is it's discipline. We are just of a mindset that we love discipline. You know, when you're in that position, when you are hungry, you know, you're craving something, a particular food that maybe you've got access to right in that moment. And when you choose to not have it, it's not suffering, it's not sacrifice, it's not restriction. We don't see it like that, it's discipline. And I know a lot of bodybuilders that, yes, you feel tired, yes, you can feel shitty, but we love the process because we feel good, because in those moments in prep, we are the most disciplined version of ourselves that we ever become. And those are the lessons that can come from dieting and following the process properly, from prep and following the process properly, that permeates every other facet of life. You know, you can apply discipline that you learn through bodybuilding prep into your finances, into your relationships, into your business, or even if it's just a job, you can apply discipline that you learn from a process of going through a prep into everything in life. Even if prep isn't something that maintains as an important or an integral part of your life. Some people come into bodybuilding, they'll be in it for a few years and then they leave for whatever reason. But there will be things that they learned through that process that will benefit their life.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, probably people are doing their preps so they don't really have that much good overlap to life. But I think the people that kind of get it, as you said, can have like huge benefits for future aspects of the life. And I really like that one. So I would be interested in how you make sure that in the moment you enjoy prep to the fullest, and get the most out of it, if there's anything in particular.
It sounds, now, because of how often this gets spoken of, it sounds a little bit cliche, it sounds a little bit, but knowing why you are doing it is genuinely one of the most important things. Because for me, like, I'll give you a very, very simple example. During my prep in 2019, weeks out from the British finals, when the diet itself was the most restricted and was the hardest to stick to, caloric intake was very, very low, energy levels were low, you know, the desire for food was high. My daughter decided in that moment, for weeks on end, that she wanted her breakfast to be brioche buns with toasted brioche buns with Nutella on it. So every day, without fail, when I was getting up in the morning with that prep hunger, I had my daughter saying, "Daddy, can I have brioche buns with Nutella, please?" Which was always yes. But in that moment, I knew that as much as I would love to have one, the whole process, the discipline of the process, being on stage, being able to achieve the best version of myself that I could at that moment, was the most important thing to me. And it's difficult to explain, because it's either there or it's not. If you struggle every day during prep to stick to the plan, to do your steps, to do your cardio, to get through the workout, to do that next set, if you struggle all the time and you feel the need to find this constant drive of motivation just to get through the day, prep isn't for you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the hardest things for people to accept. There's a lot of people that prep right now that just simply shouldn't be fucking doing it. Because you'll know yourself, you'll see it in the industry, any coach will see it. You will have somebody that is in the industry for a short period of time, maybe they do 1 season, maybe 2 seasons, and then they leave, make a big song and dance about the fact that they're not going to do it anymore, and then they vilify the whole industry and say that it perpetuates eating disorders, it's negative, it's, you know, X, Y, and Z. They demonize the industry and the whole process of competing. And for me, it's not that the industry is wrong, you are wrong for the industry. Mm-hmm. You have involved yourself in a process that maybe mentally or physically you had no reason to be there. You had no right to be there. You were the wrong person for the process. Yeah.
Do you actually use extrinsically motivated goals for your prep, or do you have any, or is it purely intrinsically?
I would. It's. There will always be both in all of us, you know, and it could be the desire to be perceived as being a good bodybuilder when you're on stage. You know, that could be part of it, to show that you are good at what you do. Mm-hmm. That would most likely be seen as an external focus. And the internal drive to want to be that is the balance for it. You know, I don't think there's many things that are entirely external or entirely internal. Mm-hmm. There is always going to be a balance. It's not always going to be 50-50. Sometimes it might be 20% internal, 80% external, vice versa. But yeah, for me, it's just I want to. I don't know. It's difficult to explain because it's just there. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it's when you know, you ask somebody that wants to climb to the peak of Everest why they want to do it. Why do you want to risk your life just to get a selfie at the top of a fucking mountain? Why do you want to risk dying on the side of a mountain just to say that you've climbed that mountain? And they won't always be able to explain it. Mm-hmm. It's just in them. And
I think that's something you just have to do it. You can't fully understand prep if you didn't ever prep.
I think that's true of anything. Anything that takes anything to the extreme, you either get it or you don't. Like I've got, and I can't emphasize this enough, I have no desire to ever run like 100 miles without stopping.
Me neither.
But there are people out there that hyper marathons running 100 miles plus, you know, like without stopping, that's what gets them up in the morning. I have fucking no desire to do it, but I get it. I understand it.
I mean, it's probably a few overlaps there as well. You probably want to beat your previous number. You want to live through that pain, if that makes sense. Maybe you can even draw some lines to prep. And ultimately, I mean, it's another competitive sport, so you probably have some competitive, extrinsically motivated goals as well. So it's just not for us, I guess.
Yeah, it's even if you've got an external locus for why you do what you do, if the internal drive to pursue it isn't there, all the external,
absolutely,
you know, influence will have no influence on you. It won't make you do it.
Yeah, for me it was a lot of intrinsically motivated motives in 2019, but I still had some thoughts about extrinsically things like placings or whatever, or qualifying for another contest that I wanted to reach. And those, I mean, I still did. I mean, I had probably 100% adherence in my prep. And it was just those few moments where I was barely about to break. I just reminded myself of like my extrinsically motivated goals, and that pushed me through. So I think it's probably a good combination of both, but you shouldn't solely focus on placings or extrinsically motivated goals, I think.
Yeah, I think when people
especially as a first timer.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as you gain more experience and you've done it more, then the placings needs to be more of a focus as you're climbing the ladder in the industry. But yeah, when it comes to gut, like you just gave a perfect example of it. You know, you were very internally driven, but in those moments when the internal just wasn't quite enough, the addition of the external was enough to keep you on track. You know, and that's what I was saying before. Sometimes there's going to be a balance. It's going to be partially internal and partially external. And I think a lot of people struggle because they don't want to admit that. You know, but if you focus entirely on your internal drivers, and that isn't enough to keep you on task, in those moments when you struggle and then you break, they're the people that struggle the most overall and after a show is done. In the same way that people focus way too much on the external and not enough on the internal. And that external driver that they focus on entirely isn't enough to keep them on task. When they break, it hits them so much harder. Whereas if you just accept that there is both and you use them in synergy, there would be so few people that would actually experience that breaking point.
Yeah, agree. It's so interesting because I had a placing in my mind for like the national show, for the main show that I was doing in my season, and actually another goal to qualify for Worlds, and I actually reached both of them, and I felt on top of the world in that moment. I was feeling it was probably the best day in my life, but just not for the placings, but for like my whole family and friends were there. I had a lot of clients there, and it was just a great overall day. But like 1.5 years afterwards, I can still, like, even without those placings or without those goals that I reached in that season, it would have still been an amazing season, just because of the experience that I made. So it was more the top, the cherry on the top, rather than the whole, rather than the whole cake.
Yeah. I mean, you know, and again, that's part of it. If you are of the right mentality, the right mindset, if you're doing it for the right reasons, it's things like that. The experience is the thing that you hold closest after the event. It's not just the fact that you won. It's not just having that trophy in your living room. It's the experience whilst you were there, where you'll get a lot of people, and I say this because I speak to a lot of people. A lot of competitors will message me when they're in those moments when they struggle. And there's a lot of people that even when they win, they come away from it and they don't feel good, or they don't feel the way that they thought they would. And a lot of it is because they're seeking a form of validation from the wrong source.
And I mean, there was even that empty feeling of like reaching your goal, and then you just reached it, and now what's now? And if you don't have any intrinsically motivated or intrinsic motives with prep, you, after you reach your goal, you just like lost. And because at that point you're like pretty much starved, and prep's over, you don't have any acute goal, and those are probably the people that have a lot of problems with post prep. And I mean, post prep is not an easy period either, even for people that actually are really into bodybuilding and get it. So I can only imagine how bad it is if you just purely compete for placings, and then you get the placing, and then prep's over, and now what? And now you just don't have anything.
Yeah. I mean, so, and that's it. Even if you get the placing, you know, you have aimed for 6 months at placing first at that show, and then you do it. Regardless of whether you win or lose, bodybuilding competition is anticlimactic, because there has been a build, a countdown for months. You know, it's not just 8 weeks, it could be 20 weeks, it could be 26 weeks, it could be even longer. And it counts down and counts down, and the tension builds, and the excitement builds, and the drama builds, and the amount of contact that you have from other people through social media, the amount of attention that you get builds and builds and builds. And then you wake up on the day of the show, and like that, it's done. And then all of a sudden, all of that tension, all of that excitement, all of that anxious feeling that you get is gone. The excitement's gone. The attention is gone. And then what are people left with? Yeah.
And I mean, it's even worse. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, as you said, it's the people that focus on the placing the most, that external validation, that struggle the most after. Because everything external is just gone. There's no placing, there's no crowd, there's no judges, there's no praise, there's no anything. And if you've not got anything internal to drive you to continue to do the best that you can do, whatever the focus is at that moment, that's when people fall apart.
Yeah, and I mean, it's even worse if you only have extrinsic goals and then you actually don't reach them, and then it's over. Yeah, because
that's it. It's like you will see a lot of people, both competitors, coaches, former competitors, they love the saying, it's not you v them, it's you v you, to try and make it that it's a fully internal driven process. And it's not. It's a fucking competition. It's you v them, as well as being you v you. And that's the balance. It's the you v you, internal, you v them, external. You have to have both in focus through a prep. You can't just be one or the other. You want to beat your previous best, or if it's your first time out, you want to set the standard that you will then aim to beat every time you step into that arena again. But you need to accept that you're going up on stage against other people, because, like, say, what you produced in your first season, that is now your standard that you need to beat. So let's say the next time you compete, you beat what you did last time. You produce a better physique. You know, you are even stricter with your diet. You're more meticulous with your approach. So you have beaten you. But then you end up on stage with somebody that's better than you, and they beat you. That you v you mentality won't be enough to keep you afloat after the show. If you keep it in focus that, I might get beaten by an outlier. There might be that anomaly that shows up who's just a freak. If you allow yourself to keep that in focus, that when it happens afterwards, instead of being, but I beat my previous self and I won last time, so why didn't I win this time? You know why? Because somebody better came along. And it's just, I think it's an element of reality from my perspective. Keeping yourself open, that you are in a competition, you are against other people.
Yeah, I think that's just the nature of the sport, because first and foremost subjective in nature anyway. So you have judges that are actually judging you on like different criterias, but then you also have like just the competition aspect where I mean, ultimately your placing is about who was there on that day that you competed. There can be just, as you said, somebody who's just a freak in nature, a genetic outlier that just blows you away. And if that person wasn't there in the first place, you may placed higher or whatever. But I think, as you said, it's super important to keep that intrinsic part like this, beating yourself or beating your previous best, and then still going for the extrinsic part of like the competition itself, because it's a sport competition. And I think that's where you get a lot of people that like that competition aspect even gets a lot of people that like extra drive, or the extra spice, I guess.
Yeah, those that achieve the most are generally self-driven, competitive people. So they don't need the motivation from who they're going to be up against to keep them on track. They can do that themselves. But the fact that they're going up against other people just drives them even harder.
Yeah, I really like that. So, I mean, we could probably just chat about prep for those 2 hours, but nevertheless, we have some other topics today. So, if we actually dive in more into the mindset and mental health side of things, before we actually start, I would be interested in where do you get all your knowledge about that, about those topics?
A lot of what I do with regards to the life coaching, a lot of what I use with my clients is, if it's not just come purely from the experience of coaching for so long and learning how to understand people, how to work with people, there's been a lot of focus on CBT and NLP as well. Both of those things, again, I use both of them as methods of helping people. And a lot of it is through the study of people. I've read a lot of books. I'm trying to think of it. Atomic Habits is a fantastic book. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that's a fantastic book. I've read numerous Tony Robbins books. I've read a couple of Richard Branson's books that are business related, that have got a lot of carryover into life in general. Because that's something I said earlier. I can't remember whether I said it when we were recording or not, but there's a lot of things that you can learn through one process in life that can be a very specific focus, like prep, the discipline of prep, that those lessons can be applied to your career, to your finances, etc. There's a lot of what I have learned that has come from people like Lewis Howes, Ed Mylett, Andy Frisella, Les Brown, Gary Vaynerchuk. I've followed him for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And one person that I came across a long time ago, 2011, I believe it was Eric Thomas. I don't know if you know who he is. He's called the Hip Hop Preacher. And he's the guy that is responsible for the quote, "When you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, then you'll be successful." That's something that I think most people in the bodybuilding industry have come across now. And he's the one that said that first. That was part of a story that he used. I think it was in a college or a high school when he was doing a public speaking event. And a lot of it is just an amalgamation of everything. Everything that I expose myself to, personal experiences, professional experience with clients, things that I've read, things that I've learned, through general study. I think it's the same for everybody. Yourself, your knowledge of coaching it's never going to come from one source. It's going to be everything that you've done, everything that you experience, and it all comes together. So,
I mean, it shouldn't come from one source. At least. Yeah, that's pretty interesting, because I was wondering if you have any academia background in terms of psychology or something like that.
No, it's that's something that I was considering doing that a few years ago, but I just decided against it. There was something about the something about the linear approach of that academic profile that it just didn't appeal to me. You know, having the title that would have come from it would be nice, but I spoke with a trusted friend of mine called Zahir. He's my osteopath. And I you know, I sat down and discussed it with him, and I said, do you think that I should? And his exact wording was, I feel that you would lose more than you would gain through going through that process. And to be honest, he is one of the very few people whose opinion I trust implicitly.
Okay, cool. I mean, it was even a tiny hassle to find out your name, so I was wondering if I may just miss any academia things that you have done.
It's funny the amount of people that if they see me in the gym or they see me, you know, wherever an expo or something like that, will come up to me, and instead of having my name, they do tend to say, "You're ARKNutrition, aren't you?"
Perfect.
Because they don't know my name.
What is that ARKNutrition actually about?
Well, the nutrition is simply because when I first started my Instagram page and that side of coaching and things like that, that was the sole focus of what I did. It was all training and nutrition based, and the ARK is my initials. So my initials are ARK, Andrew Ronald Keiller. Cool. And that's it. You know, there's nothing cool, special to it. It's literally just my initials.
Perfect. So I will, I will just make like a quick list or something like that for all the sources that you have mentioned and put them in the show notes. And I think we're good to go for that. So we have 4 big questions, and I'm actually wondering if we get through them all, but we will just start with the first one, and that's actually about life values. So what are your biggest values in life, and how do you make sure to communicate them well with others?
As far as communicating them well with others, I find and I have found over the years that the easiest way to do that is to just live by them. And people will very quickly realise what they are. And for me, the deepest core values that I've got is things like honesty. Honesty, loyalty, commitment, you know, optimism, or maintaining that positive outlook. Those are things that I find are, for me, the non-negotiables. And the way that I communicate them well is I make anybody that is going to be close to me in a personal sense fully aware of the fact that honesty and integrity, loyalty are the most important things to me. And I find that the way that people learn that that is true the most is that when they cross the line and they get removed from my life with immediate effect, they know that I'm serious about it. You know, it's just something that I'm unwilling to compromise. And this is something that's important for people to know. Set your values and then be unwilling to compromise. Because your value systems are a key driver of your behaviours and largely a way that you feel. You know, your identity is intrinsically linked to your values, and it can be seen in anything. If you are in a relationship with someone and your core values don't match, you have absolutely ensured that you are going to have a difficult relationship. You know, and your core values aren't just things like honesty, loyalty. You have value systems that are societal, they'll be political, your values with regards to relationships. If your core values don't match, that is just conflict, guaranteed conflict. And that is something that I find a lot with my clients that I coach from a life coaching perspective. Most of the conflict that people experience in life is because their actions and behaviours do not fall in line with their core values. So if you, I'll use honesty because it's an easy example. Say a core value to you personally is to be honest. If at any point in time you conduct yourself in a dishonest or disingenuous way, you will get an internal conflict. And that is a primary driver of the mental state that you experience. So let's say you yourself, honesty was a huge core value for you. And then you ended up meeting someone and ended up in a relationship with them, or started to see them when they were in a relationship as well. That is a dishonest, a disloyal position to put yourself in. And that will have a negative impact on you, because you are going against your value system with your behaviors and your actions. When I get people to make sure that their behaviors, their actions match with their value system on every level, there's so many issues that people may have been struggling with for years that just melt away.
Those are some good points. First and foremost, I found it interesting that you mentioned optimism, or I for myself kind of worded it like realistic optimism, because you also have those people that are just like super naive about it, and that's probably not something that you want to do either. But I just agree with pretty much everything that you talked about there. Is there in terms of like finding those values or evaluating them for yourself, did you ever write them down, or did you did you deeply thought about them and then wrote them down or whatever?
I, for myself, from a personal development perspective for myself, that really started during 2011. And that was one of the things that I focused on heavily, because it is essentially the foundation. As I said, it is a main driver of our behavior and identity. And a lot of people right now don't know who they are. You know, if you asked somebody, if you sat down with somebody and said, define yourself for me, explain to me who you are, a lot of people get stuck. I have discovery calls with clients that are going to be, or people that will become a client. And that is one question that I always ask. Like, explain yourself to me, define yourself for me. Who are you? And I've had people that are in the 30s, in the 40s, in the 50s, sit looking at me, just staggered. They don't know where to start. And a lot of that is because they're completely unsure of their identity. And one thing that I find that a lot of people do right now in society is trying to define their identity by a single thing. And everybody that I speak to that tries to hold their entire identity on a single hook are always lost, always emotionally, not unstable, but emotionally erratic. Miserable is an easy word for it. And it's because our identity is layer upon layer upon layer. And then you're trying to define something that is multifaceted with a single thing. Like, I'm a bodybuilding coach. Right, okay. Well, what else are you? That's it. You know, that person is not going to be happy.
Yeah. Do you think there's like individual differences in that? I'm not entirely sure who talked about that. I think I heard Jordan Peterson talking about that. That you have like a small amount of percentage in the human being that can simply focus on one thing for their entire life, and be I don't want to say happiness as necessarily, but
content.
What?
Content would probably be a better word for it. So not specifically
Maybe,
happy, but quite at peace with just focusing on that one thing for their entire life.
But that's only a small percentage of people, and I really resonated with that, and that really makes sense for me.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, you know, we constantly evolve, and that's another thing that some people seem to be lost on. You change as you age, as you experience different things, different people. You know, surround yourself with different people, enter into different relationships, new jobs, relocating, for example. Your personality, your psyche is going to evolve all the time. And if you try to hold on to who you used to be, that is another problem that I've come across with a lot of people. The unwillingness to release who they used to be to become who they are, or who they want to become. You can't drive in reverse and go forwards at the same time, and that's what a lot of people are trying to do.
Cool. I mean that was pretty quick actually. I thought we would talk about that topic quite more long, but I mean we can break down any of those things that you mentioned there, but I think things like honesty, integrity, loyalty are just basic concepts that pretty much everyone who has a grasp probably understands. I mean, if you want to touch on any of those necessarily, you feel free to. But if not, we can also just move on.
Well, I think any of the points that we're going to touch on today, it could take up the entire time that we've got to speak. Because everything, when it comes to mentality, when it comes to mindset, there are no absolutes. That's something that I'm quite big on. There will be certain things that people say in statements. There'll even be things that I say, and the way that I phrased it, the way that it comes across, is that I am speaking as that is the absolute, and that's never the case.
Yeah.
Because one of the things when you're dealing with humans, with our individualistic nature, is that nothing applies to everybody. There is no one thing that applies to everybody. In the way that there is no best diet, there is no best training program. Especially when it comes to psychology, there is no one thing that is true for everybody. But there's just, like when it comes to values, as I said, one thing that I said that, would be observed as an absolute is that if you and your partner, if your values do not match, then you are going to have a lot of conflict in your relationship. That is spoken as an absolute and may not technically be true, but for the vast, vast majority of people, that will be true.
Yeah.
Because if let's use political as an easy example right now, because of everything that has just gone on over in America. For some reason that presidential election seemed to grip everybody. Everybody got involved. So you've got that conflict between that Republican, that conservative mindset, and you've got the liberal, the Democrat mindset. If you had a partner who was the opposing side to you, that would cause conflict, because even that political value permeates social values, financial values, how even things down to emotional values, moral values, because you will get people on both sides that have differing opinions with regards to abortion, with regards to healthcare, with regards to welfare. So, benefits and things like that. So something as simple as a political difference can cause a lot of problems in a relationship. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And that's something that a lot of people miss. Like if you get someone that is very much in favour of capitalism and they have a partner that is very much socialist, just write it off, because it isn't going to work. You will clash so heavily on lots of different areas of life because of that one value. And that is why it's important for your values to match. If you've got a value of, within a relationship, it's you and your partner, and you are, it is just you two. You involve nobody else. But your partner doesn't see it like that. You want to be monogamous. Your partner wants to be polyamorous. That is going to cause a conflict that isn't going to work.
Absolutely.
And as far as you said, do I write down my values? I do, like, doing gratitude and things like that, affirmations. That is something that will benefit everybody. That will benefit everybody regardless of your walk of life. Taking the time out from each day to be grateful for things within your life. And the longer you do it, the better you get it. And what I mean by that is, I've had people sit down with me, or I've had a coaching call, and I've asked people, what are you grateful for? And they've said nothing. I'm not grateful for anything. Those people, I've never spoken to a single person that has either felt they've had nothing to be grateful for, or has been grateful for very, very few things, that has been in a position in life that they enjoy, that's been happy, that's been content, that's been at peace. And some people have seen the greatest change, even though none of their circumstances have changed. Nothing changed. Financial didn't change. The relationship didn't change. But they exercise gratitude every day, focusing on the things that they've got right now that they're grateful for. The most simple of things, like the clothes on the back, the fact that they've got a home, you know, the fact that they wake up every morning in a bed that's got clean sheets on it, that they've got a pillow, that they can go and have a hot shower, that they can brush their teeth. You know, the simplest things in life that get taken for granted, and the more time they spent focusing on it, the happier they became, because they were being grateful for what they already had. And as I said, you know, one thing that influences one area of life will permeate through to others. Those same people then saw increases in the financial stability, the relationship improved, because they were more grateful for what they had. So they respected what they had more. And as the respect for it went up, the benefits that they yielded from it went up as well. And that needs to be part of someone's values, to be grateful for what you've got right now.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. And as you said, I think like daily affirmations and gratitude process is something that a lot of people can benefit from. And I mean, there are some different mediums you can, I personally do it in my notes on my phone. Should probably write it down. I think that's probably a better way to do it. To be honest, I would probably buy something like a planner or like a gratitude note, whatever, in the near future. I did that in the past and then ditched it for the notes, and then I probably come back to writing it down again. But I mean, it even has some overlap to the prep questions, to the prep question I asked you before, because even in like the darkest moments in prep, you probably have something to be grateful for, even if it's just the matter that you can actually do this right now. And I think that's something that is actually that pretty much every aspect of life benefits from, just being more grateful.
That is 100% on point, 100%, because there were times during prep, and it happens every season, you'll see people complaining, you know, they're just moaning about every aspect of prep, and I just think, why are you doing it? Whereas for me, even in those moments where I was hungry, like that prep pain of hunger, and I'd sit back and I'd be like, this is such a privilege. Like the life that I'm living right now is the biggest fucking privilege, because I'm in such a privileged position that I get to choose to be this hungry. I get to choose to go to my fridge and pick specific amounts of that food and that food and that food and put it together in a meal to give me the exact macronutrient profile that I need at this point in the day. You know, and it blew my mind that people could be in that position and be, oh, sad panda all the time. Like, grow up. Like, you're in a position that you are so privileged, you can choose to be hungry. And at any given moment, if you don't want to be hungry anymore, you don't be hungry anymore. You go to the fridge and you eat the food. You go to the cupboard and you eat the food. You can choose to be hungry. And there's millions and millions of people around the world that are starving who have no choice. And we, as bodybuilders, can choose to be hungry. We can choose to select specific foods and put them together in specific concoctions, just so that we can control how much body fat and muscle we've got.
Yeah.
That's a privilege on a whole other scale. And people that don't get it just need to take a step back and have a look at how their life is actually working out. And it's not even from a perspective of other people have it worse, that sort of thing. It's purely just from a gratitude perspective. You should be so eternally grateful for the fact that you've not only got a fully functioning, fully able body that you take to the gym and push the limits of to either get bigger, get stronger, get physically fitter, be healthy, but we can also manipulate the way that it looks by adding that muscle, reducing that body fat. That, for me, is a hugely privileged position that we're all in.
Absolutely.
That used to override every feeling that I used to get with regards to hunger, wanting to break my diet and things like that, because I was choosing to be in that position.
And I mean, you can even shift the mindset from feeling hunger to because actually being hungry in prep is actually you progressing most of the times, at least.
Yeah.
So you can even shift that mindset from whining about being hungry rather than kind of being grateful that you're hungry, because that's just part of the prep. That's just part of prep, and it has to be. It's just there. And I mean, I mean, obviously at a certain level you are literally starving, but I mean, you just because you're hungry mid prep, that's not a bad thing necessarily, other than the physical feeling that you have from it.
Yeah, and this is one area that is very important and specific to whether you are the sort of person that should be involved in competitive bodybuilding or not. Because people that suffer from specific eating disorders, when they are hungry, the reward that they get from that, from being able to endure that hunger for a longer and longer and longer period of time, is them falling deeper and deeper into that specific hole, you know, which is hugely negative for them due to the eating disorder and the whole psychology of that. If you are someone that has experienced that before as a specific eating disorder, whether it was diagnosed or not, or whether the thought of that excites you, not from a perspective of physical performance and being your best, but because you get to lose lots of weight whilst you're doing it, they're the sort of people that, for me, should not be involved in the competitive side of bodybuilding at all. Because that's where the danger comes from. There are traits of what we do as competitive bodybuilders that fall dangerously close to the line of that lifestyle as well, that mentality, that illness, and it's a line that a lot of people cross. And if you've been on that side before, you should never step into the bodybuilding realm, because there's a lot of things that you're going to do that could trigger that emotional feedback from how it used to be. And it's entirely judgment based.
You mean by yourself?
From yourself, from other people, from judges. You know, if you have an issue with being judged.
You mean the sport? Okay, sorry, I was just misunderstanding you.
No, sorry, I wasn't clear enough. But if you have an issue with being judged, never compete.
Yeah.
Because that is all it is. You being stood on stage with other people fully exposed, and essentially all it is a group of your peers saying who is better.
You missed a 10 and the posing slip part.
I just that's what I meant by exposed. You are fully exposed on that stage.
Yeah.
But that's it, and you know that's what it is. And there's people that want to overcome their issues with judgment by competing. And again, there are no absolutes. Some people will do that, and they will overcome their issues with judgment through competing, but they're few and far between.
Yeah, I really found it interesting that you pointed out eating disorders in a prep context, because I mean, at a certain point, you probably get at least some association from like an eating disorder in a prep if you really push it far enough. And I think, I mean, it probably gets worse the more emotionally attached you get to that. And for me, at the end, I was pretty much aware that like the status I'm in right now in regards to my relationship to food is not normal at all. But I was really rational about it, and I knew what was first and foremost going to happen and how I get myself out of this position. So yeah, I think if you at that point just get overwhelmed by your emotions about it, probably not a good thing to happen.
Yeah, it's definitely not, because you can't compete without having a high level of food focus.
Yeah.
At the same time, you can't compete with becoming obsessed with the way that you look, because that is the whole process.
Yeah, good point. So I think about the back to the value thing. I mean, we always dive back to prep, but back to the value thing. I think it's just a part of being really self-aware in the long term. And I mean, so many people aren't really self-aware at all, and I think pretty much everybody can benefit from being more self-aware.
Yeah, and it's an intrinsic part of becoming self-aware. You know, you to a certain degree, you need to be self-aware enough to know that you need to investigate it.
Yeah.
And as you investigate it, you become more self-aware.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of fear within it as well.
Absolutely.
That is a comfort zone that people will gravitate towards all the time. Instead of seeking that personal development and wanting to unearth elements of your personality that you may have never really investigated before, the risk of change is so high when you start that journey of personal development. And a lot of people don't want to because they're scared of what those changes might be.
I found that that's also a problem for people that can't really be alone. Because if you're alone, you kind of have to, you're being around yourself if you're alone. And I think, I mean, I for myself, for example, I just don't have any problem to be alone because I know I'm not lonely, but in that time frame I may be alone. But I'm just aware of myself and I'm in tune, I guess, at least most of the time. I mean, I'm definitely not perfect in that regard, but I think nobody really is.
There isn't. I mean, that's the thing. Perfect. What would be perfect for one person would be hell for another person. So that again is as perfection is as individual as the person. But what you said then was absolutely on point. And it's something that is so vital for people to understand. How you said that you can be alone, but you're not lonely. People think of the word alone and lonely as synonyms, and they're really, really not. They do not mean the same thing at all.
Yeah.
You can be alone and be completely content. You can be alone and be perfectly happy. It doesn't automatically mean that because you're alone, you are lonely. Because you can feel incredibly lonely and never be alone.
Yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's something that a lot of people are scared to look in the mirror in that respect and investigate themselves because they're scared of who or what they will find. But I've helped a lot of people that when they've actually taken that leap and they've started to genuinely start to understand themselves, they're like, oh, I'm fucking cool. I like me. I like who I'm becoming as they've started to change.
Yeah. I mean, it may be difficult in the beginning because you noticing how much you're lacking in certain aspects, maybe.
Yeah.
But then that ultimately leads to you being a better person or more, progressing in like your personality, if that makes sense. That's ultimately really good thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. Again, you're absolutely spot on. I think one of the most important things for anybody that is either starting that personal development journey or is thinking about it, one of the most important things is just be willing to accept what you find. And don't judge yourself for what you do find, because there'll be a lot of people that will start and they will realize how insecure they are. The reasons for those insecurities can be vast. Instead of judging yourself for being insecure with it, whether it's with regards to love, relationships, trust, etc., instead of judging yourself for it, just accept that you are, and then work to find out and understand why you are, because that's the only way that you'll be able to change.
And I mean, it maybe even hurts a lot of people, but I think it's crucial to accept that it's the past you, and it doesn't really. I mean, obviously it influences your future, but it's your past don't have to be your future as well. And I think actually just realizing it is the first thing for change. Yeah, 100%. Because your past self will influence your future, but it's the difference between influence and control. If somebody refuses to let go of experience that they've had in the past, things that have happened to them, your past controls your future. If you accept the things that have happened in your past, you forgive people that have wronged you in the past, it influences your future because it will change the way that you move, but you grow and you learn from it. If you refuse to let go of it, you remain emotionally anchored to that time in your life and you can't change.